In this presentation, we'll show how you can use Medial as a secure and highly integrated solution to manage your Microsoft Teams workflow and assets within Moodle. Medial's integration with Microsoft Teams can solve the issues you're experiencing with managing the explosion of content being created by your teachers and students, as well as the issues with sharing and protecting it. And the even bigger problem of making it all work within Moodle, giving teachers the ability to manage and edit, and students the ability to have access to it longer term for on-demand viewing or revision. We'll also talk through the recent changes Microsoft has announced with regards to Teams meeting recordings and where they are stored, and how Medial can help with this in relation to your usage of these recordings within Moodle. As many of you will know, Teams meeting recordings have historically ended up in Microsoft Stream. This was a workflow that seemed to work for many, as they could go to Microsoft Stream to view the meeting in a user-friendly portal that looked and felt very much like a corporate YouTube. However, Stream had some key limitations which made the experience difficult for teachers, especially with sharing the content outside of your organization. This made it difficult to share the media or embed the content in Moodle because it required users to log in and only people within your organization could view the media. The upside was that your content was protected and you could specify exactly who could see it. The downside was that the whole experience was a closed loop and intrinsically linked to your own Microsoft ecosystem, making it difficult to share outside of it. As we fast forward through the pandemic, teachers and instructors have adapted and worked around this limitation by downloading videos and re-uploading them to different systems, Medial being one of them. But as of July 2021, all Teams meeting recordings will no longer be output to Microsoft Stream. They will either be sent to OneDrive in the case of personal meeting recordings or to SharePoint in the case of channel meeting recordings. Migrating the Teams meeting recordings will be bad news for those comfortable with Microsoft Stream and have found a workflow that, albeit clunky, works for them. But it also creates some unique challenges for IT staff, as well as teaching and learning departments that need to re-educate their staff. Storing recordings in OneDrive and SharePoint does have benefits though. Many are not easily apparent to the end user, but here's a summary of some of the benefits as well as some of the limitations at a very high level. The key thing to bear in mind here is that the content will no longer go to Microsoft Stream, and videos that currently exist on Stream will need to be migrated to OneDrive or SharePoint. Even though you'll be able to share these with someone outside of your organization, it is via explicit access rather than anonymous share, and some organizations will block this option completely depending on the IT department's setup. Since the recordings will now exist on OneDrive and SharePoint, content is shared via a link rather than embed code, which makes the use of the content within course materials much less user-friendly. The links mean that the user is constantly being redirected away from the Moodle interface, and embedding content will be very limited without some kind of custom implementation. So, now that we have seen the pros and cons of both the current and upcoming workflows for team meeting recordings, let's take a look at how Medial can simplify and streamline the workflow. Medial's integration with Teams enables all meetings recorded in Teams, either personally or in a channel, to transfer automatically to Medial and made available within your Moodle user's account. Once a transfer is complete, the system can be set to automatically delete the original file on OneDrive and SharePoint. We'll show exactly that step-by-step workflow later in a demo. Unlike OneDrive and SharePoint, the Medial workflow makes all team meetings recordings available in a content management system built for media admins that can quickly and easily edit, delete, and purge content. The Medial workflow will be similar for instructors familiar with Microsoft Stream. The content is stored in a user-friendly portal called Media Library. The key difference is that content can be easily shared via a simple link with no need to explicitly specify users as with OneDrive or SharePoint. The content can be embedded via a simple iframe and, if required, be restricted to certain users via a simple click. Medial admins can access the Teams setting by clicking on the Teams tile in the Medial admin UI. Enabling the integration is as easy as adding some required application details and choosing if you wish to delete after import, which removes team recordings from OneDrive and SharePoint once they've been transferred by Medial. You can also choose whether you wish to download for all users, and the default category to move recordings once the recording is created. These settings essentially allow all team recordings to be ingested into the Medial platform, even if there isn't a corresponding person with an account in Medial. In that scenario, the content can be ingested into a default category, but it will automatically be moved into the user's personal category as soon as they log into Medial or access it through the Medial plugin in Moodle. If you don't want to download all meetings for all users, the admin must decide which team user recordings they want to be transferred into Medial. These recordings will subsequently end up in the corresponding person's personal media account in Medial's plugin for Moodle. Users can be imported into Medial via CSV file, or you can simply search for the appropriate user. The key thing here is that the email address of the Teams user must match that of the user account in Moodle in order for the content to successfully find its way to the right person's media account in Medial's plugin for Moodle. So now that we've seen the basics of how you can connect Teams to Medial, let's take a deeper dive into the integration with these components and the Moodle plugin. Microsoft Teams already has plugins for Moodle. However, these are very basic and focused on making Moodle courses available within Teams via single sign-on through Office 365, or just simply allowing you to create a meeting link to a scheduled Teams meeting within the Atto editor. With this in mind, let's see what your teachers can do once they have recorded their Teams meeting and imported it into Medial. As with most Moodle plugins, Medial is available via a button on the Atto text editor. Once you click on the button, you're presented with a multitude of different functions. We'll leave uploading and recording your screen for today, but these are all features that are standard within Medial. The Teams meeting recordings ends up in the user's personal media area. You'll see here that a number of Teams meeting recordings have ended up in my personal media area. These are all of the meetings that I've recorded either on a personal basis or in a Teams channel. By clicking on Select, I'm able to embed the recording in the text editor, which creates a better experience for end users, rather than linking to a meeting on OneDrive where my user would be taken out of Moodle. And by adding it here, I'm ensuring that my content is embedded within the Moodle and secure. The Medial plugin for Moodle uses LTI, which means that the content will only work within Moodle by default unless you choose to make it available elsewhere. The user also has the ability to change the playback speed, a feature not available within OneDrive or SharePoint, and you can also edit your Teams meeting recordings using Medial's powerful in-browser editing feature, again without leaving the Moodle interface. You can trim, chop, and even create new standalone media assets from an existing recording as a destructive or non-destructive edit. In addition, closed captions can be added and edited within media assets, something also not available at launch with OneDrive and SharePoint. Teams recordings currently only output to OneDrive and SharePoint in English, whereas Medial supports English, German, and Spanish, and we have the option to use human transcription when greater accuracy is required. Within OneDrive and SharePoint, media analytics are limited because they are set up for traditional Office 365 documents rather than media files. So although it's potentially possible to see who has taken a look at your content, you don't get the granular level of analytics that you need in relation to media, like student engagement, for example. Medial provides powerful analytics for teachers and admins for Teams meeting recordings, allowing you to see an overall view of your media assets, as well as individual clip analytics that include overall engagement for the audience over time, as well as individual student engagement with a meeting or recorded media over specific time periods. For example, which students have watched a clip in the last month and how engaged they were with it. A key improvement with the transition from Microsoft Stream to OneDrive and SharePoint is the ability to set policies within Office 365 for content retention. That being said, this is usually controlled by the IT department and distanced from teachers and multimedia professionals. Medial's content policies feature is different because it enables the Medial admins themselves to archive or purge content based on business rules, whether that be Teams meeting recordings or other multimedia assets. As a Medial admin, you can create as many content policies as you like, making them as simple or as complex as you require. Here are just a couple of examples of popular content policies. Teams retention policies are set to delete meeting recordings after 60 days. With Medial, you have the ability to define retention based on granular criteria, as well as when and where to archive content prior to deletion. More importantly, you have the ability to recover content as well, especially since you can archive to cheaper storage alternatives and restore from there. Content policies can be applied to users, groups, and categories. It can also take into account courses in Moodle as well, giving you the power to delete all meetings for a particular user who may have left, or a course that is no longer available. It's obvious there are key differences between the two workflows. With OneDrive and SharePoint, users are redirected away from Moodle, there is no ability to embed meetings easily in a course page, and the meeting itself is not editable and captions are limited. With Medial, everything is fully integrated, which allows you to easily share, edit, and embed content. Medial fully supports multiple languages and captions, as well as advanced analytics. For more information on our Teams integration as well as our Moodle plugins, visit medial.com.